In today's video, we're going to be going over learning curves. Now, sometimes when we talk about learning curves, you've heard someone say there's a pretty steep learning curve. Generally speaking, that colloquial use refers to the difficulty or the amount of material to be learned. Either it's difficult material, or there's a lot of material, or there's both. Difficult and a lot of material to learn. And therefore, because of the difficulty and the amount, we call it a steep learning curve. It's a difficult amount of information to learn and absorb. That is not what we're talking about today, that colloquial use of learning curves. We're talking about a scientific use of learning curves. This is a graphical representation of the rate of learning. And because it's a graphical nature, because it is measurable, it becomes a very useful tool for managers, for human resource professionals, for instructors, to essentially be able to graphically represent and check over time the rate at which material is being learned. It shows the efficacy of training materials. It shows the impact of work environment, positively or negatively. And because of its assessment nature and its graphical nature, you can see areas where things are improving, and therefore you want to maximize those, and areas that are not improving or perhaps plateauing or going negatively, and you want to minimize those or remove those. So we're going to talk about some common patterns in learning curves and what they look like and what they represent and mean. So on the board behind me, just a reminder again that learning curve is a graphical representation of the rate of learning that's going on, rate being the change over time in the person learning the material. Things that impact the rate of learning, once again, are the quality of the material used, the instruction, quality of instruction, and the environment in which it's learned. All these can contribute to greater rates or lessened rates. And the graphical nature of it then, you've got time going along the bottom here and the amount learned going along the top. A negative flowing or a negatively accelerating learning curve would look like this. It may begin rapidly and have a pretty steep amount of acceleration, and yet it slows down, plateaus, and learning is no longer happening as time goes on, new material is not being absorbed. There is a negative acceleration to the learning curve, and so it looks like this humped hill here. On the contrary, the opposite would be a positively accelerating learning curve. A positively accelerating learning curve may start slow but then rapidly increases. For whatever reason, as time goes on, more material is learned and therefore it curves upward like this. So negatively accelerating, positively accelerating, and then sometimes another common pattern is what we see as the S curve. Things begin rapidly, taper, plateau off, something new is brought in, a new environmental factor, perhaps a new technique is used, whatever, and then it reverses and becomes a positively accelerating one again, and so you get this S-curve effect. When we talk about the negatively accelerating curve, remember it's stopping, positively accelerating curve goes up. This area here at the top, and this area here before it goes up again, is called the plateau, and sometimes you have a plateaued learning curve, where basically time goes on, no new learning is taking place. It's not negative, it's not positive, it's plateaued. And so if you see this here at the top, then this area here would be the plateaued stage of a learning curve. It's a diagnostic tool to measure the rate of learning over time. It's important for managers, for trainers, human resource professionals, instructors. They can use this graphical representation of the rate of learning as they graph it and measure it by getting actual real results in to diagnostically determine, are my techniques working? Is the material I'm using working? Are there environmental factors that are contributing to positive rates of learning? Or are there perhaps negative materials, negative environment, or negative instruction that is retarding or lessening the amount of education or learning that is going on? So it's a helpful diagnostic tool to determine whether or not things are being effective in the way they're used. Negatively accelerating ones downward, positively accelerating ones up, and then the S-curve incorporating both. This has been just a basic overview of learning curves and their use and utility. If you'd like to learn more about this and related matters, underneath this video you'll see a link. If you'll click on that link, it'll take you to the website that has that information, and while you're at that website you'll also find a link to an ebook that's ready for immediate download.